So quick setup is from the home page. You go to the download section, download the latest server. And once that finishes downloading, just install it. Run the server. Now here you can install the virtual joystick driver to get access to the analog controls and the virtual joystick buttons. It'll also tell you here if there's a new version to download, and it'll give you a button that will link you to the download section on the website. And you can manually add a firewall rule if it doesn't automatically add one for you when you push the power button. So I'm just going to install the VJoy drivers. Sometimes if this hangs here on some machines, you can manually finish the install just by pushing this Finish VJoy install button here on the server, or after about 30 seconds it will finish itself. Okay, and that's pretty much the initial setup. From there, all you have to do to connect is push the green power button on the server, and then push the green power button on the client, and that's it. You're set up, good to go. From here, you have an away from keyboard function where you can set a duration. For example, I can set 2 hours, and then turn that on, and it'll push a random key between WASD or space at a random interval between 1 and 5 minutes for a random duration between 1 and 5 seconds until the timer runs out, or until you manually turn it off or disconnect from the server. Another feature is the Gamepad feature. That's more for use on your phone, but it'll give you access to using the device as a gamepad. If I open up USB game controllers in Windows and check the VJoy device, you can see the joystick buttons and sticks interacting with the driver. The next thing you want to do after installing, if you do install the VJoy drivers to use the extra controls, is the Calibrate Joysticks button. And then all you have to do is hit Run Calibration, and it will start that process on the server. And it will run through it for you automatically. Just don't touch anything and let it go, and it will do the whole process. It takes about a minute and a half. And once it finishes, it should close all those windows down for you, and then you'll get a report on the client to say that it's complete, and then the joystick controls are good to go. Now in Star Citizen, this is the main panel for Star Citizen. You've got your 6 main buttons: the flight, vehicles, mining, comms, FPS, and turret panel shortcuts. Up the top you have joy binds. When Star Citizen's running, that will let you actually draw from the game what your joysticks are bound to. We'll load it up now. There's a set default button here, which for the profiles, when you have a profile set, you hold that down, it'll give you the prompt to hold to set. You hold it down for 3 seconds, the little tick will go green on the disk, and it will set it as default, and that's the profile that will load when you start the software. The next button is the palette button. It lets you pick what colours you want for the application by default. You just hit set. That will also save in the profile if you save a profile, or if you set it as default, which just saves a profile called default. And then the last button is the profile button, which allows you to see your saved and current profile. So I can save a new profile here, let's call it new, red, save that. Now if I look in profiles, we'll see we've got new red here, standard and default. You've got the new profile here, new red, and you can load any of the other ones that you've got. So we can load back into the standard profile. You can also delete profile, so if we've got new red, select that, hit delete, confirm, and then it's telling you now that the profile you're currently running is still active, but it's unsaved, so it won't be there next time you start. So the 6 panels at the flight panel, these are the controls on the flight panel. Over here you've got a joystick input which you can bind in Star Citizen to control like your SCM. This is another slider that you've got as an analog input. I use it typically to bind to strafe up and down. Makes it easy to control the really big ships in atmosphere. You can just put a little bit of up strafe so that they fly straight rather than sinking all the time. Down here you have a radar ping, which will allow you to consistently ping the radar at an interval based on the slider between 1 and 10 seconds. And then over on the far right is a slide out shortcut to the comms panel keys.
The outlaw group Ninetales had taken over several platforms on Crusader.
There's a vehicle panel with again another big slider. Again, shortcut to the comms panel. All of the buttons are configurable, we'll go through that soon. There's a comms panel which allows you to save chat messages. So if I want to save help me please, because I'm always dying all the time, I can click and hold, store that in here. It'll flash green, that's stored. Now if I want to send it to the chat, I just push that and it will send it in the chat. Another use for this is for some console commands you use regularly. For example, the old r_display info. I'll save display info 1 in this slot, and I'll store 0 in this slot. Now if I want to turn on the FPS display, I can just push that button. Correction. First thing to do is go into configure, select the button that it's assigned to, and set the send button to tilde instead of enter. If they're blank, it's enter, and if you put another button in there, that's the button that we use to send instead. So now that I've set that, it'll put those into the console automatically. We'll turn them off. Now that we're in Star Citizen, if I go to Joy Binds and I get, say, get IDs, it will tell me which joystick slot my specific joysticks are bound to, and then if I want to swap those, or if I want to swap the my Logitech joystick with my VJoy device, I can just swap that with 2 and slot 3, hit swap, it will do the console command for that for me and tell me that they're swapped, and I can just swap them back, same way. So if your joysticks get mixed up and 1 becomes 2, this is a quick way to fix that. Now if we look at the flight panel, actually we'll go back to FPS, and we've got leave seat. So there's a little quick demo of the responsiveness. Entry there, torch. So the other buttons that are there are the global push to talk buttons. So these are bound to joystick buttons so that they can be maintained held without interfering with your keyboard commands or your other joystick commands. So instead of having to hold the push to talk button down, you can just toggle it on and off. It's global, so if there's extra panels like the quick shortcut to the comms panel with push to talk buttons as well, it'll globally change those. Or if I turn it on and go to another panel like the flight, it'll be on here. I can turn it off there, go back to FPS, and it'll be off there as well.